Today we're going to learn how to crochet a granny square using double crochet stitches. So grab your yarn and your hook and let's get started. There's many different ways in how to crochet a granny square. I'm going to focus on the double crochet version, but you can easily crochet this also using single crochet. So here's an example of one that is with single crochet. The main difference is that it has one chain in the corner versus 2 chains or maybe even 3 chains if you prefer doing that for double crochets. The same is true for half double crochets doing it this way. The thing that all granny squares have in common is the collection of 3 stitches. Doesn't matter which stitch it is, whether it's single crochets, half double crochets, double crochets, treble crochets, meaning they all have a specific look, and that is this look. Now, that is the traditional granny square stitch using the granny stitch, which is the collection of 3 stitches, and then having a chain in between them. There are many different types of granny squares that are non-traditional or that are partially traditional. So you could even crochet this without any of these holes. And then of course there's many other ways to crochet a granny square, going from not only from the center outwards, but also in rows or diagonally, many different ways. The idea is that you have a square in the end that you could be using for many different things, such as blankets, purses, scarves, hats, and bags, and so many other different things. It is pretty much a motif that you can use to assemble a bigger crochet item. So let's get to the nitty-gritty and start from the center out and crochet it this way. Now, if you prefer the written pattern, I have a link in the description that will get you to the written pattern. This is the visual version so that you can follow me along. You can start a granny square from a chain, meaning chain 1, 2, 3, 4, and then placing all these stitches of the first round into that first chain. Or you replace that first chain with a magic ring. That is the way I prefer doing it. I cross this over, put my yarn through like this, so I have a little tiny loop. It's similar to a slip stitch, just a little bit more open. And then I like to place my ring finger into that ring so that it stays stable and doesn't go anywhere. Now we're going to place our chain of 3 like it says right here, and we're going to place 2 double crochets right into that ring or the chain. 1 and 2. Now you're going to crochet 2 chains and then 3 double crochets all into that chain or magic ring. 1, 2, and now 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Now you're going to repeat that. That means 2 chains, 3 double crochets, 2 chains, 3 double crochets, 2 chains, and then you're going to slip stitch back into the top of that chain of 3. Now once you're done, you're going to slip stitch to the first stitch, which in this case was the top of this chain of 3. Now you're going to place again a chain of 3, and we're going to do the 2 double crochets into that chain space right here so that we can kind of hide that chain of 3. Now you could also replace this chain of 3 with an alternative turning chain, but I'm going to stick with a chain of 3 for now. So that means a chain of 3. So, and then I like to kind of go back here into that chain space so that I can kind of hide that slip stitch and it doesn't look so obvious. Now, some people don't do that, but I like doing that because it looks prettier that way, as you can see right there. So now we're going to do a chain of 1 and then 3 double crochets all into that chain space, chain of 2, and then repeat that. That means 3 double crochets also into that chain space. So let's do that. Chain 1, and then right here's that chain space. That's where you're going to place 3 double crochets, then a chain of 2. For this specific example, you could also make a chain of 3 into the corner, but that doesn't really matter too much. And again, 3 double crochets, So now you're going to place one chain, and now in every corner you're going to do the same. So that means right here you can see the corners. Let me use my hook for this. So we just did this part right here. Now you're going to do this. That means you're in the other corner right here. That means 3 double crochets, chain of 2, 3 double crochets all into that corner, then a chain of 1, and then you repeat that corner again, chain of 1, and then here at the very end we only have one set because we already made one set. So that means 3 double crochets and a chain of 1. So that's what we're going to do, and then we're going to slip stitch to the very first stitch. So now that we did all the corners with the chain of 2 in between, so we have in each corner 3 double crochets, chain of 2, 3 double crochets, then in between here is a chain of 1, and then repeat the corners as I just mentioned. And here at the very end I did only one set of the 3 double crochets, then a chain of 2, because we already did the very first set in the way beginning, right? So now we're going to slip stitch again to that very first stitch, which is the chain of 3, or better the top of the chain of 3. So like so. So now that slip stitch is done and we completed the round. So we're going to do one more round, and so you can see how it's now expanding. In order to expand, you can see that we're adding more and more stitches to the corner in order to go outwards. So now that we finished round 1, round 2, we're now going to do round 3, and it looks very similar, just that we have an extra stitch now in between here. So we're going to do a chain of 3, 2 double crochets together into the same chain space like we've done before here previously, then chain of 1, and then we do the granny stitches, right? So each granny stitch has 3 double crochets. So every time you see a chain space, right, one of them, you're going to place a granny stitch. And then in between the stitches, between the granny stitches, you have a chain of 1. And then in the corner, you always do the same thing. That means 1 granny stitch here, that is 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then again a granny stitch, chain of 1, then a granny stitch, chain of 1, granny stitch, chain 2 in the corners, and another granny stitch, and so forth. So let's start with that. So chain of 3 as we've done before, and again like I did in the previous round, we're going into that chain space right here and placing the double crochets. So that's 2 of them because the chain of 3 counts as a stitch. Now chain of 1. So you're only doing chain of 1 if you're not in the corner. If you're in the corner, you're doing a chain of 2. So right here is the chain space, so we're going to place a granny stitch. So 3 double crochets together into the same chain space right there. So they're all just together, right? Like placed into that. Then chain of 1. And again, we're doing the same thing in the corner as we've done in the previous corner. So 1 granny stitch, that means 3 double crochets, a chain of 2, and again another granny stitch. So now we do a chain of 1 and another granny stitch right here. So you can see every time I have a chain space that is on a flat edge right here, we're going to just do a granny stitch, and we have a chain of 1 in between, right? Once we hit the corner like now, we're going to do the 2 granny stitches with a chain of 2 in between, right? And then you do that all the way around until the end, where here you're doing only half a corner because we already did half a corner. So once you've finished, it looks like this. As you can see, I slip stitched again into that top chain of the chain of 3. So you can now expand further, and the idea is that for a granny square you can go as big or as little as you like. It really doesn't matter. So here in this case I then went further for this specific pattern right here. You would repeat it as we've done before. So a chain of 3, 2 double crochets together, chain of 1, and then every time you see a chain space you're placing a granny stitch, and then in between is a chain of 1. And in a corner you will always have 2 chains. The rest is all the same, and you're just going to keep on doing this over and over and over again. In fact, I even have a blanket using the granny square as the template, which went really big. It uses really fluffy yarn, and in 2 hours you have a blanket made. So hopefully you're going to check that out. There's other patterns I have on my website using the granny square or the granny square stitch. Go take a look. There's a link down below in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And I hope to see you next time for another tutorial with me, your host, Nikki. Until then, I'll see ya. Bye.